While a lot of slang terms in Formula 1 will be familiar to long-time viewers, we were all new ones. We all had our first Grand Prix that we either attended or watched on the TV. So it's important to try and understand what the commentators, the drivers, the race engineers, and everybody associated with Formula 1, even the content creators such as myself, are talking about when it comes to certain terms that are sometimes unique to Formula 1, but usually at least unique to racing. If you watch other racing series, you might already know what a lot of these things mean. I'm just going to go through them now. This is part of the beginner's guide series to Formula 1 here on the F1Chronicle.com. So let's dive in, guys. Let's go with some slang terms and explain what they mean in Formula 1. We'll do this in alphabetical order, and we'll start with backmarker. A backmarker is a driver or car that is significantly slower than the leaders and is often lapped during the race, usually due to being in an uncompetitive car or having a performance disadvantage. Last year in 2024, I'd say the proper backmarker of the grid were the Sauber's cars. You know, they were the slowest by some distance, and they usually finished lapped and last in the race as well. Blistering, graining. Blistering is when the cold surface of the track causes pieces of the tyre to blow out of the surface because the inside of the tyre is warmer. Graining is the opposite of this. It is a situation when the tyres are cold and the hotter track surface often causes the rubber chunks to come off the tyre. So yeah, basically if the tyres are too hot for the surface, if the tyres are too cold for the surface, that can cause a lot of problems. You're much more likely to get something like this during the extremes of something like Las Vegas, where it's very cold, or a really hot one such as Brazil later in the season. Bottoming out. When the underside of the car comes in contact with the track at high speed, it is referred to as bottoming out. It happens because of the uneven tracks and in cases of sudden rise or crest. You get a shower of sparks when the car bottoms out because F1 cars use titanium skid blocks underneath their chassis. This is something that is particularly apparent. I mean, it doesn't happen more often, but it's particularly apparent during night races. You get a lot more sparks there because it's darker and the sparks will show up a lot more because of that. You also get it in this generation of cars a lot more as well because of things like the ground effect causing porpoising, which is where the car kind of vibrates from end to end and therefore causes a lot more sparks. Teams have got on top of that for the most part these days, but you still do sometimes see it, particularly when their cars are being run on the edge in terms of setup. Box. I'm not talking about cardboard boxes, I'm talking about pit stops. Boxes is a reminder to the drivers to come in for a controlled stop in the pits, such as a tyre change or if they need to change their front wing. The word is derived from the German word Boxenstopp, which means to do a pit stop, and it just comes across very clearly on the radio, box, box, box. It can't be misconstrued for something else very easily. Brake bias. Brake bias is when drivers adjust the difference between how much the front wheels brake and the rear wheels brake. Normally both the front and the rear wheels will brake equally when the driver pushes down on the brake pedal. In wet conditions, the driver may want to increase the braking in the rear tyres to reduce the front wheels. It's basically to stop the tyres locking up, and therefore, you know, you lose grip, you damage the tyres, your brakes are getting too hot. You don't want that. You want to adjust the brake bias so that you go into corners with the optimum amount of braking power there, whether it's, you know, just to make sure it's the correct amount pretty much, because otherwise you're in trouble. You're going to lose lap time as a result. Dirty air and clean air. Dirty air is the turbulent air that's left in the wake of the preceding car. So when a car in front of you races off into the distance, they will leave a wake of dirty air. Clean air is the opposite. When there's no cars in front of you, the air is effectively natural, shall we say, undisturbed. I think is the best way to probably say that. So therefore your aerodynamics are going to work the best in clean air, and they're not going to work very well in dirty air. I've got a whole video going over that. I think it was one with Ed Bernardin, so do check that out if you've not already, of course. DRS, which stands for the drag reduction system. This allows cars to open a flap in their rear wing to get a performance advantage in a straight line by reducing the overall drag. You can do this during the DRS zones in practice and qualifying, and during races and sprint races when there is a sprint race in the weekend. That can be used when you're within 1 second of the car in front at the DRS detection point, and you can even use it on cars that are 1 second ahead of you when they are almost a lap down as well. The system does not differentiate between lap cars or soon to be lap cars and cars on the lead lap. falling off the cliff. Sounds dramatic, and it is, to be fair. It's all to do with tyre wear. The way that the Pirelli tyres are designed in Formula 1, they're basically designed to fall off the cliff in terms of performance. They give a lot of performance for the amount of laps they are meant to, but their performance, their overall grip, falls off a metaphorical cliff. It's very sharp in decline in terms of overall performance. Therefore, that phrase has become very common in Formula 1. You don't want your tyres to fall off the cliff round a lap because you'll lose several seconds and have to come in for the pits and lose probably a few places as a result. Now, I spoke about locking up before, but I didn't mention the word flat spot. Flat spot is what happens when a tyre is locked up and the part of that tyre that is effectively dragged along the surface of the road while it isn't moving. Because when you lock up a wheel, the wheel does not rotate. It's an under rotation. It does not rotate. So therefore, one patch of the tyre is making contact constantly with the road, and that excess friction causes a flat spot. It basically means that your tyre is going to really vibrate. Look at Kimi Räikkönen at Nürburgring 2005. If you want to see what a really bad flat spot can do to your Formula 1 car, spoiler alert, it can destroy your entire suspension. So when you get one, it's no laughing matter. Green track. A green track is an almost unused track that cars and drivers encounter on the first day of practice, or in fact, if there was rain between sessions, that can often wash away, that's the term, wash away all of the marbles out on the track. The marbles, of course, being bits of discarded tyre, which is another one on this list, which I've just skipped a bit ahead to there. But because of that, basically, there's less grip on the track. When a green track is there, it basically means that it's very low grip, so be careful when going out there. You can't push 100%. That is often why we see lap times improve as the weekend goes on, because more and more rubber is laid down. Therefore, there is more grip on the track. Lift and coast. If a driver feels that he is going to run out of fuel before the end of the race, one technique to actually save fuel is to lift and coast. So instead of accelerating constantly towards a braking zone and then hitting the brakes straight away, you will actually lift off the throttle a little earlier and use the aerodynamic drag of the aerodynamic devices on your car to slow the car down. This basically, it actually saves you some brakes, of course, but most importantly, it saves you some fuel because you are on the throttle for less time around the lap. Refueling is not allowed in Formula 1, so you can't come in to actually do a fuel stop even if you wanted to. So lifting and coasting is often the way that drivers actually maintain their fuel load and get to the end of the race as a result. Oversteer and understeer. Anybody that drives cars will probably know what this is already, but I will briefly explain what understeer and oversteer is. Understeer is effectively when you are taking too much speed into a corner for the amount of grip that you have. So basically, let's just say there's a right-hand turn. You try and go around that corner at the appropriate speed you think. You turn the wheel, but unfortunately, you're still not going quite right enough to get around that corner. And therefore, in the Formula 1 sense, you go off the track, you hit the curb, you might go into the gravel trap, you might go over a sausage curb or something like that. And because of that, you therefore lose time. That is what understeer is. If you had more grip or you took the corner more slowly, you would have been able to get around it. Oversteer is kind of the opposite, really. So oversteer is basically where you have too much speed and you lose the rear end of the car, you lose control of that. Oversteer can often actually happen as well when it comes to getting on the throttle. That's basically the usual way it happens. So you get on the throttle, you think you're doing it an appropriate amount, but unfortunately the rear tires don't have enough grip. Just like with understeer, how the front tires didn't have enough grip to get around the corner, oversteer doesn't have enough grip to actually safely apply the throttle. You'll get some wheel spin, your car will kind of jink from side to side a little bit, tire wear is increased because of that, and you'll lose time on top of it as well. So both are very bad in a Formula 1 sense, and both can be remedied by alternating your driving style, getting some fresher tires, or changing the setup of the car depending on what point of the weekend you're in. Polesitter. A polesitter is the driver who sets the fastest lap in qualifying and therefore starts from P1 on the grid for the race, aka pole position. Power unit. Now, Formula 1 engines are very complicated these days, but I of course went through that already in a different video, but power unit is basically the collection of components which makes up what is commonly known as the engine, but technically the engine, the ICE, the internal combustion engine unit, is only part of the power unit. You've also got other parts on there such as the MGUK, the MGUH, the control electronics, and the energy store as well for all the electronic parts of what a modern Formula 1 car is. All of those, of course, being made much larger in terms of the overall percentage of the power that it produced from 2026. Engines in Formula 1, or power units in Formula 1, I should say, produce around 1,000 horsepower, aka a lot. And the last one, all that power has to go somewhere, and if you get on the throttle a bit too hard, you might cause a tank slapper. A driver is said to have got a tank slapper when a sideways movement causes the rear end of the car to step out of line. It looks dramatic, it looks cool, but it's an oversteer moment, and it's a lot slower doing it that way, and it wears your tyres out more too. But hey, you'll get a lot of style points for doing it, just probably not Grand Prix points, Formula 1 points for doing that. But yeah, those are some Formula 1 slang terms, Formula 1 jargon. What's your favourite bit of Formula 1 slang, the terminology that, you know, we use in the pinnacle of motorsport? For me, I just love box. I think that's a really simple one. It's one of the things, if you say it to anybody in the street, they'd be like, what are you doing? A box? You're boxing? What does that mean? Are you punching them out? Like, what's going on? But it turns out it just means something completely different in Formula 1 because it comes from another language. So what's your favourite, guys? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you very soon for some more F1 explain videos here on the F1Chronicle.com. Like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell as well, and we'll see you soon, guys. Have a good one.